Welcome to the Winning Edge podcast, where we share focus, fueling, and faith-filled stories and strategies to give young athletes the tools they need to become the best versions of themselves as athletes and individuals.
What you eat and how you think can transform your athletic performance and overall well-being. Whether you're an athlete, coach, or fitness enthusiast looking to gain that mental edge and optimize your health, this podcast is for you. We are your hosts. I'm Lindsay, former collegiate athlete, coach, educator, and educational coach for over 20 years, and a mom of 2 young athletes.
And I'm Stacy, registered dietitian nutritionist of over 18 years and also a mom of 2 young athletes. Today, we're talking about a topic that affects nearly every athlete: body image. Whether you play basketball, swim, run, or cheer, how your athlete sees themselves matters, not just for their performance, but for their overall happiness and mental well-being, for sports now and throughout their lives. So what is body image? Well, it's ultimately the way our young athletes think and feel about their bodies. In sports, this can get extremely complicated. Sometimes our young athletes feel pressure to look a certain way or worry about not fitting some ideal body type for their sport. But here's the truth. Athletes come in all shapes and sizes, and athletic success isn't limited to one body type or one physical appearance or look. Recently, we shared on our Span social page the Sports Illustrated cover of 3 powerful female athletes: Alona Maher, a great rugby player, Livy Dunn, and Jordan Childs, 2 excellent gymnasts. And what was fun to see with these 3 female athletes is the varying ways that their amazing athletic bodies fueled them to success, all looking unique in their own ways. It's also been fun to watch as Alona Maher has been such a champion for young women and body positivity. Alona is not just an amazing athlete, as a national and international rugby career that boasts being a 2-time Olympian for the USA Women's Rugby Sevens team, participation in the Tokyo 2020 Olympics, participation in the Paris 2024 Olympics, where she won a bronze medal, which was historic for USA Rugby. She competed in the Rugby World Cup in 2018 and 2022, and she was a best finish 4th place in 2018 and 2022. You might know Alana from her great accomplishments as an athlete, but what you might not know about Alana is, by most people's standards today, we might consider her, if we were purely looking at BMI, as being obese. Maher has publicly stated that at 5 foot, 10 inches tall, she weighs almost 200 pounds. But what you might not know about that is 170 pounds of that is lean muscle. Based on these figures, that means her estimated body fat percentage is 15%, which is significantly lower than the 25 to 31% range that's considered for most healthy, non-athletic women. I'll be honest, Lindsay, I love this, and I have to share with you. So I'm someone who prides myself in health and nutrition. I went recently, did my InBody test, sitting at a 21% body fat, and I felt pretty good about myself. You know, that's better. That's like in the athletic range for an adult woman who's in her 40s, but 15% body fat.
Yeah.
And so I love this. I'm excited about this topic today because I really do think it's important for our young athletes, but also our parents, to not measure their own worth, not measure their athletes' worth by what their bodies look like, because so many athletic bodies look so different.
Yeah. And it's something that I know all athletes go through. When I was coaching, I coached 5th grade through 8th grade girls for a long period of time, and they all had body image issues. And then working in education, in middle school, which is brutal. Middle school is the worst 3 years of a kid's life, I swear. They're amazing, but they beat themselves up, the boys and the girls. It's constant negativity. So I think that it's just a very relative and important conversation to have. And it is kind of a hard conversation. I think a lot of times people skirt around the topic because they don't want to step on toes or say something that could rub someone the wrong way. But I think it's a conversation that needs to be had.
Yeah. Or I actually find, so I think there's places where maybe some folks don't address it, but I think there's also, and you talked about this with your grandmother in the book, and I'd love to talk about this story. And I even have a personal story for one of my athletes where someone has good intentions in what they might be saying, but their words can have a lot more weight on how you feel about your own body, your self-confidence. And so do you want to talk to our listeners a little bit about that? Talk about the book.
So in our book, The Winning Edge, right? Chapter 2, it's personalizing nutrition for young athletes. And it goes through the steps of how to assess their individual dietary needs and how to create a balanced diet. But part of it really talks about the warning signs and when there's body image issues and how to notice that and the prevention that can be put in place to kind of support your child. But it also talks about the role that parents and family members have to play. For me, this was when we were editing, this part of the book really like it hurt reading because I experienced that with my grandmother. And I've talked on the podcast before. I literally love my grandmother, but she
loved you.
Yeah,
she had your best
She
intention.
did. But man, the damage that was done, even to this day, I still struggle feeling comfortable with my body. And I was in such amazing shape in high school. My dad was a bodybuilder. And so he would take me to the gym. Like my legs, I was so toned. I was so strong. But she would say like, oh, you really want to eat that? Or then, at times I'd be eating. She goes, oh, you're eating too much. You should stop. But then if I didn't eat, she would say, well, why aren't you eating?
There's a lot of criticism around food, a lot of focus around food.
Constantly. And I remember the day of my wedding, she actually told my husband, she looked so great. Now you're going to have to keep her like that. And it was like traumatic. I was like, wow, it's just that she was so unaware of what had been done.
And I honestly think, first of all, I'm sorry that happened to you, but I don't think I think it happens more often from well-intending parents, family members, friends, even coaches. We have a really personal story. And I think I know you know this very intimately, where I had removed our youngest son from a situation where there was just a lot of comments by someone who I know loved him and cared for him very much about his weight or what he needed to be eating. And I can tell you as a registered dietitian who has worked a lot with kids with eating disorders, and unfortunately, this person to this day probably still doesn't know this, but it sent us on a long spiral. Worried about what he was eating, having almost obsessive compulsive behaviors around food, feeling really bad about himself and negative about food and body image. And I felt like I had worked so hard to set a healthy, positive stage, and that was so quickly undone by someone who didn't know. Right.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
had well-meaning intentions and wanted to be encouraging, I think, and wanted the best for them, but their words were really harmful. And so, and I think this is an interesting topic for us to get into, especially with the rise of GLP-1s. 1 in 8 American adults is taking a GLP-1. And I see it more often than not in what I do in my full-time job and in my part-time job of the impact of the way even adults have distorted relationships with food and their own body image and the unintended consequences of what that does for their children, for our young
absolutely.
athletes.
I told you, like, I have changed everything about how I feed my kids based on you. I thought carbs were bad. Like, you don't need the carbs, right? You need the protein, you
And
the
you're down.
vegetables. I've lost a lot of weight. But I think in shifting my mindset based on what you've taught me, my kids have so much more energy.
Yeah. And you have more energy
I
and
have
you
more
feel better.
energy.
And
I feel better. But I'm not like restricting them like, oh, you've had these carbs, you can't have any more. No, they need way more carbs than I do. So really, it's like adjusting my nutritional needs are not the same as theirs, and that's okay. And knowing what do they need based on their body and their level of play, it's not going to look the same as mine. And so you've made that huge impact on our family. So, I hope that and get that guidance too.
yeah. And I think it's a topic that, ultimately it arises from this like societal beauty ideal that we've set. And it's kind of trickled over even into sports where we, especially female athletes, I feel like can face a lot of pressure. Male athletes too. I even experienced this with my nephew who was a gymnast for a while of like this self-imposed or even imposed by people around you ideal to be this certain physique, which can fuel a really unhealthy obsession with weight or shape or, like how masculine or feminine they are. And I just think it's such a potential negative impactor to confidence and even motivation for their sport, which I'm so glad we're talking about today.
Yeah. And so if we look at like their self-esteem that they have, that directly connects to their mental health. But their mental health connects to their body image. It's like the cycle that they're constantly caught in. And kids tend to say, I don't like the way I look, or I wish I looked more like so-and-so on their team, or like this person that plays professionally. And they think there's something wrong with them, when in reality, they're perfectly designed. Like they are
fearfully and wonderfully made.
Wonderfully made. Like that is their body structure. That is their body type. Can there be changes made to help, gain more muscle mass, or maybe they want to lose a few pounds, but obviously, but I think that a lot of times as adults, we forget that these kids are changing so rapidly between the ages of 7 and 18. They're naturally changing.
Well, and I think back to what you were saying. So this cycle really, it starts with, oh, I don't look the way I like. I wish I looked like these other people. And then that goes into, okay, self-esteem. I don't think I'm good enough.
Yes.
Other people are better than me. I should be able to do and look like. And then that goes into long-term mental health. And it's not just for their sport now. It's, to your point of what you said, it's impacted you your entire life.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so it's a subconscious that you've carried with you for a really long time. And so I just think it's important that we stick on that for a minute for parents, thinking about the words we say and use with our young athletes. If you're concerned about your child's weight or health, I mean, I could not encourage you more to work with an expert. Find someone who can help them talk about food and nutrition in a way that it's really about fuel. What we control as parents is we control, are we putting healthful foods in front of them?
Absolutely.
And are we controlling kind of the timing and availability of those? What the kids get to control at this age is how much or how little they choose to eat. And the hope would be, kids are really good at this. They honor their hunger cues. When they're hungry, they eat. When they're not hungry, they don't eat. Like, I've even seen it with our younger one. Like, he's eaten a whole lot more. And then I'm like, oh man, he just grew 2 inches. And so it's like, they are, when they're left to be in tune, they can be really well in tune. That can be thwarted by, we're spending way too much time on video games. We're not moving our bodies. And so all of those things, but those are also things that as parents, we really get to control. And I also think you said something really important is before the age of puberty for both male and female athletes, one of the things I always tell parents is like, it's really about getting them healthful options. It's about creating a positive relationship with food because to your point, Lindsay, so much changes once puberty hits.
Easy to me. Again, being in the middle school world, 6th graders come in and they are small. They tend to be small still, right? They look like little people. We're like, oh, they're so cute. When they come back the fall for 7th grade, you're like, who are these kids?
Oh my
because
gosh.
they've changed so much. And then by the time they leave us in 8th grade and go to high school, it's like a completely different kid. Like, oh my gosh, you came up to my shoulder when I met you. Now you're like a 1.5 feet taller than what's going on. And that's why they're hungry all the time. What are like you're saying, okay, you want to eat 4 meals? Because I feel like Taco Bell at my house. It's 3rd and 4th meal. Put a lock on
Not
my
that you're
snack
feeding
cabinet.
Taco Bell.
No,
Feel like
no,
you're like, oh my gosh,
3rd
it's
meal,
the dream.
4th. Yeah, those commercials crack me up. I'm like, I need another job just to feed these kids. But I did. I put a lock on the cabinet, which might sound crazy. Like, hello, they eat all the time. But I put the lock on the cabinet where it's like the snack kind of stuff. Because I'm like, okay, open the fridge because there's
You can have yogurt, you can have cheese.
Absolutely. You want pepperoni, you want some deli meat with cheese, you like make a sandwich. Just not where they're having access to like, okay, well, how many goldfish?
The goldfish that you might give them before practice so they can have fit carbs.
Exactly.
Yeah. And I think, a big thing with that for me is, and this is what I tell folks all the time is like, and I was laughing the other day because we were at a game, a high school game for my older son, and my younger son, of course, he sees the concessions open and he's like, oh, I got to get the concession. And I'm like, I think for me as a parent who's a dietitian, again, it's about teaching them to make healthy choices. And are they always going to do that? No, they're not. Because you know what? As an adult, sometimes I don't always make that choice. But the more they can be informed, the more they can experience, okay, when they eat that super, quick carbohydrate, doesn't make you feel very good. You're tired in the next like 30 minutes or an hour versus they eat something where they feel really nourished. I tell the story about Clay before his soccer game eating a thing of blueberries instead of eating like the other snack that he wanted. And he scored 10 goals and he's like, oh, mom, yeah.
The blueberries.
Like, they have to experience,
yeah, they do.
Making good choices on their own because at some point they're gonna grow out of our household and they're gonna have to make those choices. And I think 2 of the biggest ways we do that is number 1, by model behaviors ourselves as adults, what they see us do. Like you can't say, do what I say, not what I do. And then the second is, again, to your point, Lindsay, of having these just like healthful options available and helping them understand how they feel as they're fueling and they're making really good choices and like how energizing that feels.
Absolutely. I totally agree with that.
I would also share, like, I think it's so funny. And I was thinking about this because, your oldest, August, he came over and the kid wears a 7.5 size shoe.
Yeah.
And this is, I'm like, he and he's 10, 11.
He's
He's
11.
worn it since 10.
Since
So,
10, yeah, and he thinks he's, like, stuck at this height. He's
And
like, "I'm never gonna grow."
I see this so often with so many, and I'll tell this story of like our older son's good buddy who he had always worn a size like 10 and a half shoe. His
Mhm.
dad's like 6'3", 6'4", and he was so devastated because he's like the smallest kid on their baseball team forever. And then finally this last summer, going into his freshman year, his feet
Yeah.
caught up to him,
Yeah.
right? And so it's like, again, just so much about body. And I know it's not in the kids. Sometimes it's not on the rate that they want or the
Right.
timeline that they want, but just controlling those controllables of what you can when it comes to food and nutrition, providing healthy choices,
Mhm.
providing access, informing around what those are, because like in their right timeline and rate,
Yeah.
they're going to grow
And
into what
that
their body's
connects
supposed
right
to be.
into their confidence, right? So, August feeling like, "Oh my gosh, all these other kids are so much bigger than me right now." And I'm like, "Yeah, but buddy, you haven't hit your growth spurt yet. Like, you haven't hit that yet. And when you do, then you'll get it. Like, it'll be okay." And that feeds into their confidence and their self-esteem to know that, some of these kids that look like they're 15 right now at 11 playing ball, that might be their max. That might be their peak of how tall they're going to get. You're just not there yet. But not all kids understand that, and it does take away their confidence. And sometimes that can actually impede their ability to want to play the sport anymore.
Yeah. Well, but I think about Jose Altuve. I mean,
Oh,
we're Astros
yeah.
fans. We're here. I mean, he's a little guy. He's
So
a massively
yeah.
muscular, successful athlete. And so,
Mhm.
again, I think it goes back to whether it's height or weight, like
Mhm.
great athletes come in all shapes and
Absolutely.
sizes. And so I think our job as parents is to set them up for the controllables they can control, nourishing their body, building lean muscle mass, exercising their
Yep.
body, having a really strong mental framework, having a strong foundation of faith so that
Mhm.
they're not looking for validation
Yes.
externally from others, but they know, again, they're fearfully and wonderfully made and how
Mhm.
God made them and who God made them to be. And so I think, yeah, I love this topic, and it's a passionate topic for me. I think one of the things I do want to talk about given this is like, okay, so then what can we do, or what can parents do that are listening as they're understanding, oh my gosh, like I might have really great intentions, or grandparents, I might have really great
Yeah.
intentions, but the things I'm saying might actually be harming more than helping.
I think that, and we have all this list of things that parents can do, right? And even just looking at what your body can do and not how they look. A lot of, they're picking themselves apart as it is, especially when they're in the middle school years and getting into that freshman year of high school. They analyze everything about their body that they don't like. Like, if you were to go down into a counselor's office at a school and sit there, most of the issues that they have with kids who are depressed or have suicidal thoughts, and
It's just scary because
it
you see this
is.
as an
Oh
educator.
my God, all the time. All the time. And it's body image issues. It's hair, like everything.
Yeah,
They
it's
pick
physical.
themselves apart. And then they've got all these fabulous peers that are also picking themselves apart, because when you tear yourself down, it feels good to maybe tear somebody else down. And that's
Or
the
when someone else is
struggle.
tearing you down, it
Yeah.
feels a less burden to then project that onto
Mhm.
someone else. And,
Absolutely.
it's funny we talk about this, but it's not even just kids. Like I see this out on the weekends at baseball fields.
Mhm.
Like we'll be watching another 11U team and I'll hear parents commenting like, oh, look at that big kid. And I'm like, man, like if he
Yeah.
hears you, if his parents hear you, like,
Mhm.
and hey, that big kid just happens to be an excellent pitcher. Or, hey, look at that
Yeah.
tiny little guy. Like he's
Yeah,
super
but he's
thin. And it's
hustling.
like, but man, he can run faster than everybody else. And so
Yep.
again, there's so much sometimes that I think, unfortunately, we teach by example of how we see the world through our eyes. And it's something our kiddos then pick up on. And to your point, they project
And
that.
we're doing it because we've experienced it. Like, we've learned it. And
It doesn't make it
so
right.
it doesn't make it right. And I think, actually I was talking about this today with somebody. Every generation tries to break things that we learned that weren't necessarily right.
Yeah.
Like, we try to be better for our kids or teach our kids better because we know what that felt like. Or now we're looking back like, man, that wasn't right. And I think this is an example of it. Just your athletes, all of the kids, their bodies are not the same.
Yeah.
And if you go to a baseball game, you'll hear people say, oh, that looks like a baseball player. Well, what does that really mean? Because all of these kids out here are playing some ball. Like, what do you mean that looks like he's a baseball player? Like,
Yeah.
one body type?
Or he
designates
looks like a
that?
basketball player, but he's actually
Exactly.
quite bigger than, yeah. And
Right.
that's what the
Like,
kid's
what do
great.
you mean? You're like, now you're stereotyping a certain look for a sport. And so I think that, goes even back to that image of the rugby player.
Yeah.
I mean, her body, she is incredible. Like, she's so strong. It's amazing to me. But I think that's one of the best things is just,
focus on what the body can do.
what you can do, your performance.
Yeah. Not about external appearance, but
Mm-mm.
performance. I think another one, and we talked about this, is just modeling your own healthy behaviors. If you're skipping meals and eating junk food and you're turning around and saying to your kids, like, should you really be eating that? Or can you make healthy choices? It definitely is going to be much harder for them to do what you say and not what you do. And so I think that's a big one, is like, know your kids are listening, encouraging a healthy relationship with food and exercise. Like we talk a lot of this in our household, is like, our bodies are a temple that God gave us that we are meant to take care of. And we do that through exercising our bodies, moving our bodies, whether that's like going out to exercise or whether that's using our bodies to serve others. And then our bodies need fuel. Just like a car needs good gasoline to be fueled. And so we talk a lot more about just the importance of what good nutrition is and what it does and how it makes us feel. Than really focusing on, and I'm a big fan of this, and you know this, Lindsay, it's why we won't do any social media videos of eat this, not that, let's demonize this food, is because it's also very different. Like, people want me every day as a dietitian who works in grocery retail to, like, say that Coke is terrible and that it's going to kill you. And my brother is a type 1 diabetic. And when he has a low blood sugar, a small little mini Coke is a lot faster acting and easier for him to choke down before he goes into passing out than trying to swallow a glucose tablet that's 3 times as expensive. And so for him individually, that is something he may put in his grocery cart, and I'm not going to judge him because I don't live with type 1 diabetes every day, and I don't know what it costs to have to manage insulin payments and all of the other things that he has to manage. Now, for every individual, is that probably the thing they should be consuming all the time? No, but it's like, health is so individualized. Or I'll give another example. I talk a lot about protein. My passion for protein. If you've got someone who has a history of, kidney issues, an athlete or a parent, or they have to watch how much protein they're consuming because protein contains nitrogen and our kidneys have to filter that nitrogen, and nitrogen balance that. And so it's not one size fits all. And I think if I could say anything, like, as adults, making sure that we're really thinking about food as a fuel, it's more than that because it is a lot of other things, but thinking about that and then also realizing it's so individual. And I say this because as a dietitian, I've spent 18 years with people finding out I'm a dietitian and judging what I eat more than I ever give 2 thoughts about what they eat. And so I just think it's fascinating that I think we've created this culture where we almost have a bias for physical appearance and we judge what people are eating without knowing their health or medical history. Or
we 1,000% do. But I think that, and I'm going to speak on this for something that you offer, right? So through STAN, you offer that one-on-one coaching and individualized meal plans that meet someone where they're at. And I love that because whether they're an athlete or a parent of an athlete, I mean, we didn't have that when we were younger.
Yeah. And we've got great nutrition. We've got great nutrition coaches, whether it's myself, and I've been doing this for a long time, or exciting 2 dietitians we have upcoming on podcasts. So Jenna Brown, who owns Victorum Nutrition, and she's going to be talking to us about endurance nutrition, which is really exciting. And then Hannah, who owns Equipped Wellness out of Dallas, and she's going to be talking to us about strength. She was a power lifter.
Yeah.
And that's so it's awesome to get that diversity of specializing in. And she also works with young athletes who have adaptive needs. So if you've got an athlete who has, adaptive needs, she can also. So I mean, I love that we are really focusing on the personalization and individualization of health and nutrition, because that's where we've gone wrong for so long, is like this one size fits all, like, oh, everyone should be this or everyone should be that. And it truly is so personal, whether it's your budget or your pre-existing health conditions, it's genetics, it's food allergies, whatever it might be.
Something else that I think is parents can help their kids by thinking about who they are as a person beyond their sport. So what are your kids' interests and identities outside of being a basketball player or being a swimmer? And that reduces that pressure and anxiety that's related to their body image, whether you're transitioning out of a sport or just in between in the off seasons. Right now we're coming up on off seasons for different sports, and it's okay to let your kid relax and take some time off of the heavy training and let their bodies recover. And that also means that you might have to change up what the meals are, what the nutrition is based on, like, are they still practicing heavy, or are they hanging out by the pool for 5 weeks straight. So just being supportive of that and helping your kid realize who they are. Like, what do they like to do outside of sports?
Yeah, I love this. And this goes back to the podcast we had on just image and talking about who you are beyond your sport. And I think this brings to mind too something I want to talk about, because I talked to our youngest about this, especially when we were going through a lot of the issues he was having with body image. It's just like, it reminds me of Mark 7:15, which basically is a Bible verse that says, there's nothing outside a person that by going into him can defile him, but it is instead the things that come out of a person are what defile him. And it really is Jesus talking about in red letters the emphasis that our moral and spiritual state is determined by our hearts and by our actions, and not by any type of food we consume or what our physical appearance looks like. And so I would just share that so powerfully for our parents and athletes that are listening, is like, what defines you is the amazing heart you have, who you are as a person. And it's so much bigger than your sport.
Absolutely. And we have in the book on page 222, who God says you are. And just the fact that, your value is not determined by wins or losses or opinions or of others or circumstances. You should have security in God's unchanging love and eternal truths. And I just think that, we talk about how you're created for a purpose and on purpose in the book. And I think that just connects everything right here. I mean, what do you view yourself as? What is your image of yourself?
I love that. Something we've always done, and I'll kind of share this, and I'm like, hopefully my boys don't, roll over and try to hide when I share this. But since they were little, we've always kind of created names for them that we call them by, that they were meant to be something that kind of forms the subconscious of who they are. And so Clay has always been Courageous Clay. And we tell him this story of when he was 2 years old, him and his brother were sleeping, and his brother got scared of something. And so he crawled under the bed to search for what he thought might have been a risk perceived in the situation. And we found him when we woke up in the morning sleeping under the bed, and we said, "What are you doing?" And he was like, "I was just making sure there was no monsters here." And so from that time on, we have always said, like, you are going to be the protector. You're going to be Courageous Clay. And literally in his wall in his room, it says, "For the Lord God, your God is with you. Be strong and courageous." And so it's like, that is, and so we've done the same thing for our older son. I won't share for him because he's older and a teenager and he would hurt me, but giving them these names of tied to biblical verses of who God says they are, so that no matter the situation, they can really navigate these spaces and know that you're not a baseball player, you're not a basketball or football, you are this amazing human that God made. It's so much bigger and beyond your physical appearance or how other people perceive you. And so I love that. The last one that I would share, and I just share this as a dietitian, really thinking about, and we see an increased rise in eating disorders with both our male and female children, but also with adults. And so really just being alert to any signs of body dissatisfaction. So an excessive focus on weight, restrictive eating, over exercising to accommodate for eating, and just really kind of being aware of these unhealthy sort of relationships with food and body image, and even the words that we use around our own food and body image as adults.
We use words a lot with our kids as parents, but there's words that really we need to leave out, like tiny and healthy and fit and fat. You can use other words like underfueled or be overfueled. Simple changes like that, I think, are much better to use, because I do remember to this day the way that it felt hearing my grandmother say, "Well, you're getting too skinny," or, "Well, you can't eat this because you're going to get too fat."
Yeah, and focusing less on body image and much more on hunger. And so we talk a lot about, like, okay, are you full? Okay, well, if you're full, even if it tastes really great, like, you don't have to keep eating it. We can save it for later, and you can have it for later. Okay, are you hungry, or are you eating out of? And so just really talking to hunger cues, I think, can be another powerful way. But yes, our words matter so much in this space. And so something important for us to think about as parents, as coaches, for our own kids, but also for other kiddos, because I've even seen this as well. And this was something we experienced, is like parents making comments in the car. And then to your point, the kids pick up on that, and then they're together as kids, and the kids make that comment to their peers.
I think the most toxic experience that a kid can have on a team is when the teammates belittle that player or pick on them because of their body or because of just in general. Like, you see
an adaptive ability
teammates, and it really tears down kids to a point that's alarming. But for, teammates, like, listen and see what your kids are saying in the car about who's saying what in the, in the dugout, or who's saying what on the bench, because that's a conversation that the coach needs to address, because a lot of times there's competition amongst that age group or amongst the players on the team, and it becomes very unhealthy and toxic.
Yeah. And being careful as parents, because if we pass those judgments or say those words among little ears that are listening, they might not think that there's anything wrong with repeating that thing to their peer or to other friends, and maybe that peer overhears it. And so, yeah, that's a really good call out. And then I think just the thing I would say for parents, if you feel like you're struggling with this, you're not sure, oh my gosh, is my athlete getting what they need to be nourished or fueled? Are they getting too much? Are they getting too little? Just that is part of why we started this. This is my heart behind this, being a dietitian for this long, even being a dietitian and being as equipped, watching my youngest son struggle because of the words of his coaches and peers. It's part of why we started Span Athletics. And so know that there are professional resources that specialize in this. And I will tell you, the other thing is it always comes a whole lot with more clarity and a lot more impact coming not from a parent. We joked about this last night. I was talking to actually a wonderful nurse practitioner who her son plays on my oldest team. And she's like, yeah, they don't listen to me. And I'm like, yep, they never listen to you when it's your own parents. But when it's someone else, they are much more likely to listen and to be able to create a supportive environment to help them feel comfortable and to help them get the information and tools they need to be able to manage through.
Absolutely.
And so I think just, again, following all of this advice, parents and coaches can really help foster better body positivity and image, and just reduce the long-term harmful effects related to weight and appearance, and help our athletes, help them build resilience, appreciate their bodies for what they can do and how they perform, and just really through it all maintain this healthy, positive body image that can support them in both athletic performance and overall well-being. And just, I would be remiss if I didn't talk about this before we left, but I think what's really important to me too, I talked about, 1 in 8 parents being on some sort of GLP-1. We've seen with a lot of the research where these GLP-1s have helped to lose weight, but also what's happening a lot of times, if these parents who are on a GLP-1 or adults are not getting nutrition counseling, they can be losing lean body mass actually, and not fat mass. And this is really important because when we talk about health, and you're going to hear this a lot from me as a dietitian, it's truly not about weight, but I will talk to every athlete I counsel. Young Gray is a great patient that if you follow him, he's got a great TikTok account, and I've worked with him. He's down over 40 something pounds, and I don't care about his weight. I care about his lean muscle mass, because lean muscle mass is actually the single greatest predictor of both lifespan and health span. Scientific research continually shows that having lean body muscle is linked to lower all-cause mortality, reduced risk of chronic disease as we age. It also is going to help support bone health, which is one of the number one things we see with aging adults as they become frail. The osteoporosis increases, and this helps them, especially with our younger athletes or even in midlife, to reserve and aid in recovery of the body. And so I cannot stress more the importance of, again, working with an expert, understanding what your lean muscle mass is. Think about the Alona Maher, 170 pounds of muscle mass, right?
She is a beast.
Careful about that. And as adults and children, really thinking about that lean mass to total body mass is one of the most important things that we can do. And then having sort of a positive conversation around, okay, how do we improve lean mass versus how do we focus so much on weight?
Exactly. I love this. This is so, I just think this is so powerful, and that so many parents need to hear this so they can be an advocate for their child and support them at home. Right?
Well, and hopefully it resonated with some parents too, of like just equipping the parents and the athletes and the coaches, because this is a sticky space. And I think with the point about your grandma, with a lot of really well-intended, great intentions, we may not be as prepared or equipped to have some of these conversations. But the good news is there's experts that can help.
And there's so many more resources today than there were years ago. Stay tuned for a future podcast where we will bring on exciting guests in the sports world, highlight spotlight coaches, athletic directors, former and current collegiate and professional sports players, sports dietitians, sports psychologists.
What you eat and how you think can transform your athletic performance and overall well-being. Whether you're an athlete, coach, or just fitness enthusiast looking to gain that mental edge and optimize your health, this podcast is for you.
Don't forget to join the SPAN community and get more exclusive content by following us on all of our social media channels, including TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, and X at @SPAN_athletics.
Until next time, stay faithful, stay fueled, and remain focused on your goals.